You found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a representative? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 60. Welcome back, Vishanti, which I have to start with. Vishanti, welcome back to being at home. Because
after being in hell, aka Texas.
yeah, basically. Yeah. But I hope you had a trip that was not horrible.
I mean, I enjoy seeing my mom's side of the family. I've always been closer to them, and I love them a lot. And it did great things for my serotonin and dopamine to be around family for like 3 days.
Good.
Oh, like 50 or 60 of us.
Right.
My family's so big that we had to rent a charter bus to get to and from the funeral.
Which is crazy, but hey, you know what? You do what it takes, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so.
Yep. It's never boring.
I have a few things to read out before we actually get going on this. First, I received some gift packages from my Amazon wish list, including a lot of drink ingredients. And so the card says, please enjoy what I'm calling the drink ingredients pack. Happy mixing. You should have the juice, tonic, ginger beer, grenadine, and orgeat coming to you from Joshua Geese. So thank you very much, Joshua. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. I'm pretty sure I got Joshua right, but I'm not sure about your last name. So,
yeah, he sent me some stuff off my wish list too, and I was very, very pleased because it was stuff that I really needed, and it arrived like literally hours before I had to get on a plane, so I didn't have a chance to like send any messages or anything. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually drinking a much fancier gin and tonic than I normally would, because it has fancier gin, because if I'm saving money on the mixers, I might as well spend a little bit more money on the gin. And it's got much fancier tonic than normal. So the lime juice is the same, I guess, because I mean it's lime juice. How fancy can lime juice be? So, you know. But so thank you very much, Joshua. I really do appreciate it, because I skimp when it comes to my drinks. I'll be honest. I really do. I probably shouldn't, but I do. So, you know. But also, we have a few super chats in here. So, first of all, we've got one from... actually, we've got two from Ben Paluto Thick Tunic, who said, they are all shaped unlike a cube and usually benefit from lube. I would call AIG what they truly do be, but the term has been censored by YouTube. I will take a drink for that. By the way, we are doing the drinking rules, but I'm not going to go through them because you all know them. And if you don't, watch on Tuesdays.
Them out.
I will say, if you want to play along, please be responsible. Don't overindulge. Know your limits. Stay safe out there. Don't play along and then, you know, drive heavy machinery, use a car, drive a car, text directs, any of that stuff. I accept neither liability nor responsibility for any of the stuff that you do as a result of you playing along. If you want to play along with something that isn't intoxicating, or something that's intoxicating but isn't alcohol, feel free. Just again, be safe. Also, Vishanti doesn't accept liability or responsibility.
Yeah, no, I don't want any of that. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
So, and that was for £10. And for another £10, Ben Paluto Thick Tunic also says, Dapper Dinosaur and his friend Vishanti, their ridicule will forever haunt me. A bag of dicks I resemble, and thus I oft tremble, for I am a member of the group AIG. And we'll take a drink for that, too. Thank you very much. And then, in an attempt to put all of my hypothetical hatchlings through college, Ben Paluto Thick Tunicate just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Vagary, Local Interdimensional, Cephalopod, Snorfoot, My Unfinished Life, Lady V. Tavora, Lord of Ossus, and Alex Markle. So thank you very much.
Woohoo!
We'll take 5 drinks for that.
Also, I want to shout out while you're doing the drinks. Whoever built a bar next to the funeral home, you're a genius. And I would like to personally thank you for getting us through about an hour of that.
Nice.
Oh, man.
Let's see.
Location.
We have a few more things. Triceratops tic-tac-toe 3 in a row talic. who's at the amniote level and has been a member for 3 months, says AIG is a bag of oblong objects that in ugly beanies with an AIG is a bag of dicks emoji. Take a drink for that. Dark Lawn Dragon, who's been a member for 21 months, my goodness, and is at the tetrapod level, says Godzilla crushes a bag of dicks labeled AID. Mothra, and we'll take a drink for that. Then Nomura Nobuhide, for $5, says AIG is a cage of birds for which Batman's circus acrobat sidekick is. Okay. Yes, in fact, that Dick Grayson. Got it. Taking a drink. Or at least that's his first sidekick. Correctly. There's been more than one person with the Robin moniker. Dutch Tunicate Official for $5 says, on a trip to see the eclipse in Indiana, can't wait to watch the VOD later. Well, hopefully, it is, one, a great experience over at the eclipse, and two, I hope that you enjoy the VOD. And then Vaguely Local Interdimensional Cephalopod, who's been a member for 10 months, says AIG is a vociferous, vast vein vacuole of vapid, vague veins, with an AIG, a Dapper emoji, a Godzilla emoji, a Mothra emoji, a King Ghidorah emoji, and a Tetrapod emoji, so we will take a drink for that too.
Got to make sure you gotta hedge your bets.
Yeah, you guys are making me pre-game here. My goodness.
So, one of the ways that I deal with pesky human emotions in regards to, like, losing a family member, like, the matriarch of our family basically was my grandma. And for good or ill, she ruled with an iron fist. So, when you have 9 kids, you kind of have to. Especially when, you know, grandpa's away doing Air Force stuff. Anyway, the way that I cope is sharing hilarious stories, of which there is no shortage. And because we had to rent a charter bus, you know, to get 50, 60 plus people to and from, it was actually a double-decker bus, which I didn't realize existed outside of, like, London.
Right.
And that means that it is taller than a normal charter bus. Mm-hmm. And, well, friends, I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that Fort Sam Houston Cemetery was not built with double-decker charter buses in mind. So RIP to the insurance company, but the paint on the top of that bus is going to need to be redone.
It reminds me, there's a bridge where I grew up, and it has a warning, like, low clearance, and it's just the height where, like, the cab of a truck will fit through just fine, but the trailer won't. So it's like a local pastime is to just watch trucks try to turn down that bridge because, like, their GPS told them to or something. And then just crunch as the top of that bed just gets ripped away. Yeah, and amusingly enough, it's the Spaghettiville Bridge. Because I
love that name.
It's called Spaghettiville because there was a guy who opened up a big spaghetti factory in that area. I don't even think it's operational anymore. But for a while...
So there was pasta mining!
Yeah,
I knew it!
Yeah, there's a big pasta... you were in that town not that long ago, weren't you?
Yeah. I can't believe I could have driven right over, like, a tomato vein and not known it.
Nether 6 Hair, who's been a member for 4 months, is at the annual level, says, tomorrow I'll start a new D&D campaign. The module has mutated T-Rex as one of the optional fights. Should I put a top hat on it? Absolutely.
Yes.
You should absolutely do that.
What kind of question is that? Of course you should.
Is this the one from, I don't want to say it's recent, but it's, like, reasonably recent, the one that's set in Schultz in the Forgotten Realms, and it has, like, the Tomb of Annihilation or whatever in it? Is it that one, Nether 6 Hair? Don't feel like you need to super chat or milestone chat for that, just tag me. Alright, so we're here to talk more about Dave Wurtzel, not just to reminisce about Vishanti's trips. Because, as interesting as those are, we have a job to do here at Vishanti.
I mean, it was far less miserable being with my family, even considering the circumstances, than going through this freaking Dino Day video.
Yeah, so, sorry, now that you're back, time to get back into real life with all the horribleness of
now it's time for pain.
Yeah. But hey, you know what? You know what you sign up for when you come on this channel. I'm right.
I mean, I guess it's good news that I didn't immediately, like, burst into flame during the, like, funeral mass or whatever.
You can enter the Catholic Church and just immediately
step across the threshold and just immolate.
Well, I guess that's 1 for not Catholicism, 0 for Catholicism.
Yeah, take that, Roman Church.
Also, another Six Hair says it's Dungeons of Darkheim. Oh, okay, it's by the Dungeon Dudes. Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that one. First third-party book on D&D. Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it, but I know of it, and I have seen the Dungeon Dudes. I can't say I've seen all their videos, but I've definitely seen some of them. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, here we go.
This. And that would be your evolutionist's interpretation, where the tree kind of comes down through here. Or you can take that same thing and you can say, we're going to draw a creationist interpretation where the dogs have always been dogs, the cats have always.
Look, I'm not going to criticize him just for his accent, right?
I'm not criticizing. I was just emulating.
Fair.
Been cats, and the horses have always been horses.
All right, so there is some problems with this, right? So these two ideas produce different predictions that are actually testable. Because one of the things that people often say, and it's usually true about young Earth creationism, is that it's ultimately not testable. And in many cases, that's true, right? Like, how would we test whether or not there was a god out there who had just created the world to look old as like a goof on humans? I don't know how you could possibly test it. I'm of the opinion that if that had happened, then we should continue to talk about the Earth being old, because that's the only thing that makes sense. So Nomura Nobuhide says, my last reference was to All-Star Batman and Robin, although not as blatant as my original idea. Underage, right? The right would always reference Robin as Dick Grayson at 12. Yeah. No, I mean, I got it. That's why I got it as an AIG, as a bag of dicks, because Dick Grayson. I feel like I got it. Maybe I didn't. So thank you very much, Nomura Nobuhide. So, one of the predictions that this makes, right, is, and we can even give creationism the maximally beneficial assumptions for starting conditions, right? So we will say that not only are, like, morphologically similar and ecologically similar organisms going to be similar in terms of their genetics that are for, like, coding and, like, regulatory regions, right, to produce a similar type phenotype. So, for instance, if we say dogs and cats, right? Creationist. I've never heard a creationist say that dogs and cats share a common ancestor. Have you, Vishanti?
I don't think so.
Right. So I think it's fair for now to say that creationists generally reject common ancestry for dogs and cats. Okay, cool. But they're also obviously more similar to each other than they are to, say, horses or, I don't know, seahorses, for that matter, right? I've never also heard any creationists contest that.
It's right there in the name.
So, the thing is, though, if we assume that all of the stuff that's going to be similar between them, and even down to the neutral stuff in, like, junk DNA, is just going to be copy-pasted by God to the maximum extent possible. Okay, cool. But one of the things that means is then we should not be able to resolve a nested hierarchy in the neutral variation. In things like synonymous codons, in, like, protein coding regions, or in things like junk DNA. Here's the problem, though. We can use only neutral variation and get just the same nested hierarchy that we get elsewhere. And the problem with that is, if we start with identical neutral variation between these groups that don't share common ancestry, they can't then share mutations between them, because those mutations happen completely independently, right? So think about it like this. Like, let's say I write a random string of alphanumeric characters in a text file, and I send it to Vishanti. And now we both have a copy of it, right? And let's say it's, I don't know, 100 characters long, right? And so every day, I go in with a D100. So, you know, 2 10-sided dice. If you guys play role-playing games, you know how the D100 works. Vishanti, for you, it's we're going to use 2 D10s because you're all into the White Wolf thing. So
Yeah, because that's the only ones I use.
Right.
I do have the whole set of math rocks. I just,
only ever
ended
use the
playing...
D10s.
Yeah, I only ever use the D10s, but it's like I have a whole set of, like, vintage Vampire the Masquerade dice with, like, the green marbling and the red paint.
Oh, I love those. I had those back in the 90s. I have no idea what happened to them. For all I know,
man.
For all I know, my parents threw them out years and years ago. I know. Anyway, so each of us, every day, we randomly select a character, and we mutate it, right? So we roll the dice, and that's what selects which character we're going to mutate. And then we just go in and we have a program that inserts a new alphanumeric character. We're not going to share any of those mutations, right? Our changes are going to be completely independent. And so while we'll be able to create a nested hierarchy of the changes or a history of the changes that happen in each of our files, we won't be able to show common changes between our files. And that's the difference in the predictions for neutral variation between common ancestry and separate ancestry. So even if we just give the creationists everything they want, like genetic similarity is due to similarities in, environment and ecology, great, have it. It still doesn't work because it still makes predictions that are violated when we actually check the genetics of real organisms.
Fearmonger is asking if they played D&D back in the Cretaceous.
No, this was the 1990s. I'm talking about, back when I was being adopted into a human family so that I could integrate into human society reasonably well. Because, that's
no
that's
greater way
thing.
to integrate in the 90s than playing D&D.
I mean, it depends on what subculture, but also remember, I had a white wolf set of dice too. I was also playing vampire.
Okay.
Back when vampire was way more problematic.
It was edgelord 90s supreme.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Hey, what if all Romani
We're gonna use all the racist tropes.
Yeah, what if the Romani just were vampires? It's like, oh
my god.
Oh, and we insist
What
on
if we
calling them
use-
all gypsies. Oh!
Yeah, why don't we just, use ethnic slurs and ethnic stereotype? Yeah, that's fine.
Don't worry about it. Oh, every single Arab stereotype? Right there with the assassin clan. Oh, okay. I mean, to be fair, 90s D&D also had a tendency to do things like include exactly how to seduce every single female NPC in their adventure modules and stuff like that. Do you think they include how to seduce the male NPCs? No, of course not.
No.
Oh. Alright, here we go.
It's just how you interpret the data. This tree of life is full.
No, it's not, though. That's the thing. It's not just a matter of interpretation. There are different, mutually exclusive predictions from both things that can be derived reasonably easily. And we can check. And the thing is, anytime there is an actual testable prediction from young Earth creationism that is different than the prediction from, real science, you know who wins? Real science. Every single time. So it's not just a matter of different interpretations of the same data. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith says, even the dude, are you not aware of the trope of the bard seducing the dragon? That's been a part of D&D for a very long time.
Bards are the most powerful.
Or just the horniest. Dark Law Dragon for $2 says Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah all via emoji, so we will take a drink. Here we go.
On hard times in recent years.
Oh?
Here's New Scientist Magazine, 2009. For a long
Yes.
Hashtag pop science articles.
Of course. Liz D for $2 says, I interpret AIG to be a bag of Cantovans. I mean, what's the difference, right? I'll take a drink. Actually, you know what? That's not fair. That's an insult to dicks. And I suspect that a large portion of my audience have those. I don't want to be mean to you, y'all. So. It's too mean to dicks to call Cantovan one of them. Really, it's hard to find something that's so gross and disgusting that I'm willing to compare Cantovan to that thing. Like leeches, maybe? Botfly larvae. Cantovan is like a botfly larva. Yeah.
Past conscious blinking.
If you don't know what a botfly larva is, good. Maybe you don't need to know. There's some bits of knowledge that man was not meant to comprehend, like, exactly what Cthulhu's up to, or what a botfly larva is. You just don't need that information.
Every time you say it, I cast conscious breathing.
Actually, at one point, I had to take one of the dogs to the vet. She actually
better not finish this story.
Had an abscess, but I had someone who was like, pretty sure it's a botfly larva, because this person had just been watching way too many botfly larva removal videos on YouTube. And I didn't say it, but the whole time I'm thinking, botflies are extinct in basically all of the United States. It's definitely not a botfly. Humans intentionally wiped them out, like 40, 50 years ago. It's not a botfly. And, surprisingly enough, no, it wasn't a botfly. Arter Ams, who's been a member for 9 months, is at the amulet level, says, do ancient Egypt, Carthage qualify as African civilizations? Or does this term apply to south of the Sahara Is this a charged question? So I would say that Egypt definitely counts as an African civilization. Carthage is a little more complicated because Carthage is a Phoenician colony. So the people in Carthage are ethnically and culturally linked more to the Levant than they are to the rest of Africa. So it's kind of like, are the Greek colonies on the Iberian Peninsula that existed, were those Iberian colonies? I mean, geographically, but in terms of culture, language, and ancestry, they were Greek. So Carthage makes it a little complicated because it's a Phoenician colony. I don't know. What do you think, Vishanti?
Yeah, I would say Carthage. Just because it was geographically in Africa, it was by every other metric Greco-Roman.
Well, I mean, after
Phoenician,
wars,
and then it was colonized or taken over by the whatever.
I mean,
you know what I'm trying to say.
Carthage just became a Roman city.
It's just Roman.
So yeah, I would say that Carthage probably doesn't count as African in the same way as Egypt or like the Mali Empire or something, right? Because it is itself, Aksum. It is in fact a colonizing power that lands in North Africa, and in fact they are like ethnically distinct from even the people who live there now, right? So like the group that would have been native there are mostly going to be Berbers at the time that Carthage landed there, and those people are still there, right? The Berbers are still all over that part of North Africa, and they're not Carthaginians, and they're not Arabs, and they're not Egyptians, and they're not Romans. They're Berbers, the native group of people who've been there for thousands of years, since probably before Egyptian civilization. And so those are
Egypt.
Gandry Stem Locomotidae, who's been a member for 4 months, says, only so many ways to say Aeolian rocks with a Mothra, and I will take a drink. And yeah, Aeolian rocks are a great defeater for young Earth creations and flood geology. All right, here we go.
Time, the Holy Grail was to build a tree of life, says Eric Batista, an evolutionary biologist at Pierre and Marie Curie University in Paris, France. A few years ago,
bruh.
Also, Liz D, who's been a member for 4 months, is at the Enneot level, says, hey, Dapper, I finally figured out how to do a member chat. You and Vishanti are awesome, and I don't care what you say, AIG is a bag of Kentovens. All right, fair enough. I will take a drink. I just feel like it's mean to all the dicks out there. Hey, dicks are important, too. Just watch Team America, World Police. I have an excellent description of why dicks are important.
As though the Grail was within reach. But today, the project lies in tatters, torn to pieces by an onslaught of negative evidence. Many biologists now argue the tree concept is obsolete and needs to be discarded.
Okay, so I happen to be familiar with this article. Okay, we'll make this an easy one. Vishanti, do you think that he is quote mining this? Or do you think
yes.
Okay, we don't even need the other option. Yeah. Okay, so what is actually being talked about here? This is being talked about the fact that it seems like very early in the history of life, horizontal gene transfer was extremely common, which muddies the neat branching pattern that most evolutionary models assume, because most evolutionary models do not include significant amounts of horizontal gene transfer to simplify the model. But that assumption, which usually works for most organisms nowadays, and really very far into the past, at least through pretty much the whole Phanerozoic, that assumption works pretty well. But we can get really far back to like the relationships between modern bacteria, modern like Asgard biota, the modern archaeans, modern eukaryotes, right? That neat branching kind of starts to fall apart because we see evidence of extensive horizontal gene transfer. Now, horizontal gene transfer is in contrast to vertical gene transfer. So, for instance, I, and presumably all of you watching, and unless Vishanti is actually the product of some kind of weird laboratory experiment, like in twins, her too, virtually all of our genetics, except for the mutations, have been derived through descent, right? I got my genes from my parents, you got yours from yours, Vishanti got hers from hers. Again, assuming this isn't some kind of weird twin situation. Vishanti, do you have an even shorter twin that we just don't know about who got all the bad genes? Okay.
No, I'm the short twin. My other
twin.
half is actually a giant.
She's some kind of Amazonian warrior.
Mm-hmm.
She's at least as tall as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay.
Alex Markel in the chat says, how do creationists not get quote lung from all the quote mining they do?
Nice. I love that. So, so what this is talking about is just that, right? It's at the very base. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I didn't even talk what horizontal gene transfer is. So horizontal gene transfer would be like if two of my audience members, or Vishanti or I, somehow, like let's say I had a kid, and then somehow that kid got a bunch of Vishanti's DNA, even though I didn't have the kid with Vishanti. That would be horizontal gene transfer. And obviously, it doesn't tend to happen in things like amniotes, like humans and dinosaurs, right? Like, you don't typically go around finding that your own biological offspring, who you can verify is yours, suddenly has a bunch of DNA from an unrelated individual who isn't either of their parents. That's not normal, right?
Baba Ali in the chat says, is horizontal gene transfer not just a euphemism for missionary position?
It is not. It would be a good one, but in this case, it is not. At least not in this context. So there are some modern examples. For instance, there's a species of butterfly that actually expresses genes from a virus that is a symbiote with a species of wasp that is a parasitoid wasp. It's a kind of ichneumanoid wasp. So ichneumanoid wasps go around and they inject their eggs into caterpillars. And then the larvae essentially eat the caterpillar from the inside out and then metamorphose and turn into adult wasps. Well, there's a species of butterfly that's and part of the way that they suppress the immune system is via a symbiotic virus that is carried by the wasp and injected into the caterpillar. Well, this species has developed a resistance to the egg by having some of the protein from the virus that is now expressed in the caterpillar. Okay, cool. That's a recent example of horizontal gene transfer, where now some of the viral DNA is actually part of the wasp DNA, or sorry, the caterpillar DNA, and it's actually, expressed. But that's not normally what happens in modern life. But it seems like early on in the history of life, that was happening all over the place. So to say, well, this lineage doesn't have any bacterial ancestry since the split between bacteria and archaea doesn't really work, because there was a lot of genes going back and forth. And so that's what we're talking about here. Now, does that negate the idea of, say, universal common ancestry of humans and mushrooms, or humans and pine trees? No, not even a little bit, because all of that ancestry happened way after this period of extensive horizontal gene transfer was done. All this is saying is at the very most basic levels, right? Not even phylum, not even superphylum. We're talking the domain level, right? Where we have bacteria versus archaea and eukaryotes and all that. That right there is a little bit muddy. Heather, do hyenas count as dat or cogcoon? Member for 9 months says, in the world of darkness, shapeshifters enable horizontal gene transfer between multicellular organisms. Yeah, that's true. Like in werewolf, you can definitely have kids with either wolves or humans. And while there's at least in the lore, there's a strong preference for, like, if you are a werewolf whose natural form is wolf, you have a strong preference for, mating with wolves. And if you're one whose native form is a human, you have a strong preference for mating with humans. It doesn't always go that way. So yeah, I mean, that is, and of course, I'm not ignoring all the other were animals. It's just that, I mean, of the shapeshifters in the world of darkness, by far the ones that people play the most often are werewolves. Yeah. Here we go.
Needs to be discarded. But still, we have to ask the question, why?
Oh, hey. That issue came out, or was given a publishing date of my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday reference.
I guess he's butchering it. How dare you, Dino Dave?
Dino Dave is dishonoring Vishanti's house.
He has dishonored my house. The penalty is death.
Yeah. You two need to have, like, an honor duel with batleths.
Oh, I'm gonna win.
Oh, of course you are. Even if you are the trash clone.
The super chat that you got was asking, like, are you the evil twin? Like, I'm definitely your evil twin.
I forgot. Somehow I missed it. Yeah, Vandalia 1980 for $2 says, are you the evil twin or the good twin? I'm sorry about that, Vandalia. I don't... Look, you know why I missed it? It's because $2 super chats don't get a highlight. So if yeah, they don't. Like, membership milestones and anything over $2 gets a highlight up at the top. And $2, if they scroll past me, that's it. They don't even get a highlight.
Because they disappear so fast.
Yeah. Trail Mix, member for 15 months, says, what about all the Weath animals, Mothra?
Yep.
I'll take a drink for the Mothra.
The Anansi and Vampire the Masquerade campaigns, yeah!
designer design groups and then groups and then groups, kind of like Russian dolls. You ever seen these Russian dolls that fit each within each other?
Yeah, it is a good question.
Dolls?
Yeah, why would the designer do that? Because that's not how design normally works when we watch it happen in verifiable places, right? Car designs don't do that. Computer designs don't do
that. And that's kind of how life's forms are, right? So we have mammals, and then within mammals we have the dogs and the cats, and with the different families, and then over here with the reptiles, and we have these different ones. Why is that? Here's a wonderful
question: Is he gonna admit that birds are reptiles?
I very much doubt it. Although I don't even think he'll bring it up, but I would be shocked if he actually said that birds are reptiles, even though they very obviously are.
I'll have to find there's like these little games that you can play on touchscreens at the Harvard Natural History Museum, and one of them was like, which of these animals is not like the other one? And I would have failed miserably, but Fossil Daddy got it right immediately because he knows taxonomy way better.
Wonder how I would have done.
You would have gotten it right immediately.
Also, I am noticing...
Because it was something, like, obscure where if I had just gone with creationist logic, like, oh, well, this looks like this thing, then that's why I would have failed. And he was like, no, actually, these are part of the reptiles, da-da-da-da-da branch. And I'm like, this is why you're a professional.
Also, we have 102 people watching, but only 43 likes, which unfortunately means that I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. Y'all got Bilbo. Hit that like button. Remember, a like a stream keeps the Bilbo away.
Dun dun dun.
Into a little more called the Biotic message, and basically says this: the organized pattern of life calls attention to a single designer, not a common ancestor. Now follow me on this. The big
Biotic message. What? I've never... Has anyone ever heard of this? I'm going to ask the audience.
What?
I've never once heard of this book. Have you heard of the book, The Biotic Message? I wish it were Biotic Message, because that would be more fun. Evolution.
Two bills mentioned in the chat.
Message. What the heck is message theory? What even is that? I've never heard of this. Is that a creation? I mean, it's obviously not like a science book. Message theory. This I have no idea what this is. Remine. We're gonna look up Walter James Remine and see what happens, because I'm gonna go ahead and go out on a limb and say this guy is gonna be an absolute nutter.
Yeah.
Let's see. Walter James Remine. What the heck is this guy? Well, he's got a page on creation.com. Walter received a master's of science in electrical engineering. Oh, it's another engineer. Jeez, man.
Of course, an electrical engineer. Of course.
Right. The guy most equipped to talk about biology, obviously. From the University of Minnesota, and worked in mathematical fields of signal processing and pattern recognition, where he holds 4 patents. Oh, I get it. So this is one of those guys who's like, hey, this is what I do for a living. Maybe everything is like the thing I do for a living. Which, no, that's not how it works. His book, The Biotic Message, had been well received by whom? For its novel insights and arguments against evolutionary theory, and for offering a creationary alternative. Creationary, okay. A scientifically testable theory of life's major patterns. Weird how it's made no waves. The book also provided new avenues for discontinuity systematics. Oh, okay. So that makes me think this book has some of like the nucleus of like modern baraminology.
Oh no!
That's what they talk about. They like to talk about discontinuity between the tested taxa. Creationary genetics, and reopen the issue of Haldane's dilemma as a long unsolved evolutionary problem. Except Haldane's dilemma was solved when it was proposed.
Oh my god.
Like, oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, well now we know who that is. Oh, man.
Real race to the bottom with these publications.
Oh, Rana K says, the Biotic Message. Izo makes you stronger, better, faster. That is the real Biotic Message. Which, by the way, Vishant, we need to find a way for you to experience the story that is a reference to.
Okay.
It's a really good story. Dark Law Dragon for $2 says AIG is a bag of dicks, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and drink, and we shall indeed drink. Thank you very much. Alright, here we go.
Bigger error throughout history has not been evolutionary thinking, where there is no God. The bigger
Nothing about evolution says there is no God. You are welcome to believe in evolution and in God. Many, many people do. I'm taking a drink. That's incredibly stupid.
error throughout history has been the belief in many gods, many idols.
Oh, you mean like the Bible,
What?
which at no point actually rejects the belief in multiple gods as entities that exist and have power, at least in some places and times?
The Bible who names other deities
Yeah.
and has like
Assumes they exist.
yeah, and just has like battles between them. It's like, dude, really?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to find a god other than the god of the Israelites in the Bible, just do a word search for Chemosh. Chemosh. Chemosh.
Dude,
All over the place.
Chemosh won a battle against the Israelite god. It's recorded in the freaking Tanakh. Like,
Yeah.
dudes.
The king who was worshipping Chemosh committed a human sacrifice, and that gave Chemosh the power up he needed to defeat the god of the Israelites in battle. Because not only are there multiple gods in the Bible, but in the Bible, at least in some places, human sacrifice powers up the various gods.
It's like a
including the God
last
of Israel.
resort
Oh, yeah.
type of like, yeah.
Yeah, even in the ancient past, where people believed that human sacrifice could power up their gods that way, it wasn't like, oh, that's the first thing I'm going to go to. Like, no. Even in in societies where that was a thing, it was still usually a very severe and last resort kind of thing. In fact,
Yeah.
yeah. So like the idea that there were like just cults all over the place, like just doing human sacrifice on a daily basis, like no, not really. Although, I guess you could say that some of the Mesoamerican empires came a little close. Not daily,
I mean,
but they definitely did it more
yeah,
routinely than most people in the Middle East did.
this is true, and I will not say anything further.
Hey, every group of people has their unfortunate bits of their history. The world of history is not full of good guys. It is full of bad guys who are bad guys to various degrees in various ways. One of the things that I learned the most studying history in school as a history major.
Well, you
is
know
like,
what, Dapper? That's just unwelcome nuance.
I suppose. I mean, even in the most extreme conflicts where you think it's the easiest to identify good guys, it's like World War II. All the Allied countries had their own internment camps for civilians that they found undesirable. There were obvious war crimes by the United States and Great Britain in things like the firebombing of Dresden, the atomic bombings of Japan. Like, the Allies weren't good guys. It's just that the Axis were much, much worse in every way.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the war crimes committed by the Allies don't count. They absolutely do. There is no excuse for firebombing entire cities or just nuclear bombing entire cities or interning your own civilians because their ancestry a few generations back. Yeah. All right, here we go.
And so God wanted to send a message to us, not just that he's a powerful creator, not just that there's plenty of gaps between evolution, forms that kind of stands against evolution,
Which he really failed at doing because that is not in evidence at all, but okay.
but also that there is a common ancestor, there's a common designer to this, not a common ancestor.
He almost said common ancestor.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I'm sure it was just a Freudian slip, but yeah. Yeah, as Grace Pocket says, near about everyone who had a statue put up was some kind of son of a bitch or other. It's not about you, Jane. Yeah, no, it's true.
Correct.
Yeah, if you see a statue of someone, chances are you can look back into that person's life and find something absolutely horrific about that person.
Yep.
So it calls attention to a single designer that had a broad scheme, not a bunch of different gods making all kinds of unrelated things the way that they think they might be made.
Well, as is my right to being in a covenantal relationship, I would like to speak to the deity over Israel about elbows.
Yeah?
I have complaints.
As well you should. Elbows suck. Knees aren't much better.
Yeah. Elbows for me are the biggies. Like, I'm sure that you can get a knee contingent together.
Goodness. Heck, almost any joint is like, dude,
Yeah.
there's got to be a better way.
All these load-bearing structures on the body, and then we just keep making it worse.
I mean, look
I
at
love
my
it.
knees.
I love that for us.
I don't even have a kneecap. Do you know how much more mechanical advantage I could get out of my knees if I had a kneecap? Do so much better.
What would it do? Would it make you run faster or like jump
it would mean
or
that
higher?
my knees wouldn't wear out so easily. And it would mean it would be less energy to move my knees. Because what the kneecap basically does is it allows the pivot point where the tendons that help move your knee are attached. It actually helps shift that, so it's always at a mechanically advantageous point.
Interesting.
Yeah. You can actually set up a little experiment.
I'm with Genesis, the Arizona is the New Jerusalem kitty, who said it's the bipedal spine for me.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad one. I mean, for you crazy humans. For me, dinosaur, like, actually, bipedal spine works pretty fine because it's horizontal. But yeah. Another 6 hair says, how do theropod elbows compare to mammal ones? They're actually pretty similar. There's not a whole lot of difference in elbows between mammals and reptiles. Knees, there's a lot more difference, but for some reason, elbows are pretty highly conserved. Although, mammals like to do this thing where, like, they like, not humans, but a lot of mammals like to do this thing where, like, their radius likes to poke, like, back behind the elbow for some reason. I don't know why. Mark Agamotto, 1313 Smith, who's been a member for 15 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, it's the entire shoulder setup for me, Mothra. Yeah, man, I've had shoulder pains too. It is not fun.
Okay. What about the handful of
That's more than he's ever going to name scroll by on screen right now.
Oh my god, right.
transitional creatures? When you go to evolution and say, well, the big picture of the fossil record is there's no transitional forms. There's not one kind of thing evolving into another. They say, oh, we beg to differ.
Yeah, they do, for good reason.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we have Archaeopteryx, Tiktaalik, the horse fossil sequence, and the whale unit. They always...
And, you know, hominins, Neoceratopsians, dinosaurs broadly, Phytosaurs, Archosaurs broadly, the whole, you know, non-mammalian, quote-unquote, pelycosaur to mammal transition, the fish to tetrapod transition. Just the invertebrate to vertebrate transition is pretty well established. The evolution of the jaw, the split between osteichthyes and chondrichthyes is reasonably well evidenced. I mean, I could keep... Oh, the difference between basal nautiloids and ammonites going through various, like, seriatites, basal nautiloids, ammonites. Extremely smooth transition for various things like foraminifera and coccolithophores. We have extremely smooth fossil gradients for many brachiopods, bivalves. I mean, you name it. Chances are I can find a really good transitional sequence that goes from it to its more basal ancestor somewhere. There's very few groups for which we don't have that. And they're the groups that creationists like to talk about. They like to talk about, like, well, where are all the transitional bats? And I'm like, here's one, but it's really close to modern bats. It's got extra wing claws and a more primitive shoulder and skull. So I guess it's not great, but it's there. And that's what they love to pick on, those ones. Goopdo3 and his deplorable ilk for $2 says, can we get arthritis patched out in the next update? Yeah, well...
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, that would be nice. So, yeah, like, these are the most charismatic transitional sequences, is really what it is, right? Because people like birds. They like, you know, cute little fishy, amphibian-y kind of things. They like horses. I mean, come on. How many horse girls are there? Of course, the horse transition is going to be a
crap.
thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, hey, be a horse boy. That's fine, too. Horses are cool. I like horses. I wouldn't call myself a horse boy, but, like, I like horses. Whales are cool. I mean, who doesn't like going to see dolphins at the aquarium or just in the wild? One of the nice things about the Navy was how many times I got to see dolphins playing in the wake of the aircraft carrier.
That's so cool.
I loved watching it. And, like,
cute.
It's adorable. And, like, every time we would pull in or out of port, at our home port, there would be dolphins playing in the wake as we were approaching. It was great. I loved it.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, of course these are the ones that people focus on, because they're the charismatic ones. No one's like, oh, look at this excellent sequence of brachiopod shells. Because no one cares about brachiopods. Most people don't even know that they are different from bivalves or that they even exist. No one cares. But that doesn't negate its evidence as evidence for evolution. But alright, let's hear what he has to say about Archaeopteryx and Tiktaalik and whatnot.
So the same
At least he's better at saying Tiktaalik than Andrew Snelling is, with his Titillac.
Titillac.
one's out. There are these little few exceptions to the gigantic rule of large gaps and no transitional forms.
No, they're not.
Wait, is there a rule about gaps in the transitionals? Like, what?
There's a broad tendency that transitional forms at lower taxonomic levels are relatively scarce compared to higher taxonomic levels. So transitions between families are pretty common, and transitions between orders and classes, and in some cases even phyla, are reasonably well established. But if you want to find the transition between like a wolf and I don't know, like a red fox, good luck. It's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to find that. But there are exceptions. For instance, Neoceratopsia has excellent transitional forms between pretty much all of the species. In fact, so much so that the two species of Triceratops are probably actually an anagenetic chronospecies complex, where one species of Triceratops slowly evolved into the next one without splitting into separate species, and we can see the transition through time. And they're just so different at either end of this transition that we give them different specific names. Like,
Neat.
we even have that. So he's basically lying. He's conflating a relative, but not absolute, lack of transitional fossils at very, very small periods of time to just a broad lack of transitional form, which just isn't true.
But let's talk about these same ones they always keep putting out. Archaeopteryx is a strange bird. It's
a strange bird
Oh
in that
my god.
has teeth, which is a violation of the definition of bird from, say, Linnaeus, as Vishanti and I have already gone over. It has separate wing fingers, which is unknown in any bird. It lacks a pigostyle instead of having a long, bony tail like that of a velociraptor, unlike any known bird. I mean, its skull does not have an elongate premaxilla, which carries most of the jaw. It doesn't have a beak. It still has both of its temporal fenestrae with the actual bone strut between them, unlike modern birds. I mean, everything about Archaeopteryx says dinosaur, to the point that Archaeopteryx specimens have been confused for the very much not a bird, even according to creationists, Compsognathus, which is found in the same limestone formation in Germany. There was one that was only found out like last decade that, oh wait, no, this is Archaeopteryx. We thought it was Compsognathus this whole time. Something no one claims is a bird. Because the skeletons are almost identical. The only real big difference between Compsognathus and Archaeopteryx are like details of the hand anatomy. They're virtually identical.
weird bird, no doubt. It has teeth in its beak. It has claws on its wings.
The claws on its wings is actually irrelevant, and I don't know why people keep bringing it up. Lots of birds have claws on their wings. I mean, pretty much all the ratites do, pretty much all the Galloenserae do. Galloenserae is the things that usually are called fowl, so like chicken, swan, geese, grouse, partridges, all those kinds of things. They tend to have claws on their wings. Watsines tend to have claws on their wings. It's a pretty common thing in birds. In fact, there are ducks and swans that actually have, or geese that actually have pretty significant thumb claws that they will use as weapons. They'll swipe you with a wing and they'll cut you. They will literally cut you with their wing claw.
That's how geese are, man. They're just
geese are
freaking
horrible.
vile.
Yeah, they're the worst.
True tail, not just feathers, but actually vertebrae that go down in a true tail.
Birds have a true tail too. It's just short, and the last group of vertebrae are clumped together into a pigostyle. But they usually have between 3 and 5 free vertebrae in the tail that actually are able to move. That's how birds can move their tail feathers in the first place. If you're a human and you have a coccyx, which is entirely inside the body, and none of those vertebrae are free, you can't move your tail because it's entirely fused to your pelvis. That's not what birds are doing.
Archaeopteryx means ancient wing, and some evolutionists said, well, maybe it's kind of...
Okay, I don't know who made this, but there's some very obvious inaccuracies. First of all, let's take a drink, because Archaeopteryx absolutely did not have a beak.
Oh my god.
Further, that nostril is in fact where Archaeopteryx antorbital fenestra was, but it's positioned roughly where a bird's nares would be, except that that's not where its nostril was. It was at the tip of its snout, just like most dinosaurs. So we've got that wrong. Next, we've got the feet. Those feet have an inverted hallux. Archaeopteryx did not have an inverted hallux. It was at one point thought that it did, but it turns out that was an artifact of how the bird was preserved in the limestone, where its feet were bent out of shape. Subsequent finds of Archaeopteryx have overturned the idea that it had a perching foot with the big toe pointing backwards like you see in most modern perching birds. My Unfinished Life for $5 says, I bought Ramin's book and immediately had buyer's remorse. I'm not surprised. Although I will say, I do like that we have like the ginkgo tree leaves, because that is an appropriate choice of plant for Archaeopteryx. And they're actually pretty well done. So I'll give props on that. I'm actually impressed by that. Yeah. You usually don't get a whole lot of representation of like paleobotany in a lot of like, clearly this is not a professional paleo artist who's doing this. So, you know what? Credit where it's due. I appreciate the ginkgo. The South Geek the South Geek Insurrection for €5 says, Mom, can we get Kent Hovind? We have Kent Hovind at home. Shows this mother effer. I'm so done. This guy is laughable. He really is. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of problems with this. Also, that ear hole is way too high up on the skull. It should be way lower. The ear hole on reptiles tends to be right behind the joint between the cranium and the jaw. And that's in part because, hey, you know how humans and other mammals have those 3 inner ear bones that start out as jaw bones in embryo and then work their way back into the ear?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in reptiles, those bones stay in the jaw, but are still used for hearing. Which is, you know, a little hard to explain outside of evolution. Why God would just be like, we're going to give you jaw bones, but only as a tiny embryo. Later, they're going to turn into ear bones. Why don't they just start as ear bones? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, really.
Half dinosaur. It's a dinosaur that's halfway to being a bird.
I mean,
This is a mammal that's halfway to being a dog.
it's... First of all, I don't know what halfway would mean. It's certainly not a bird in the sense that I would call it a bird in a technical sense. But yeah, I mean, it obviously has features of modern birds, but also features that modern birds don't have, but that basal dinosaurs do. So let's talk about what it actually means to be transitional, right? Because in some sense, it's true that every animal is transitional because it's a transition between its ancestors and its later descendants. But we need to talk about the kind of characteristics that we use in evolutionary biology to determine relatedness from a morphological standpoint. So the first thing I want to talk about is an apomorphy. So an apomorphy is a derived trait within a group. And I also want you to remember that these words are conditional. So an apomorphy of birds might be a plesiomorphy of a smaller group of birds, like, I don't know, we'll pick finches, right? So things that are apomorphic on birds as a whole will be plesiomorphic in finches. Plesiomorphic means the traits that you share with your ancestors, and usually with wider groups of organisms that share those same ancestors. So for instance, birds, the condition of having 4 limbs is plesiomorphic to birds, right? Because birds have 4 limbs, so do reptiles that aren't birds, so do mammals, so do most amphibians. That's plesiomorphic. That is inherited from your ancestor all the way through. So having an antorbital fenestra is plesiomorphic to birds. So we can't use that to say, oh, it has an antorbital fenestra, it must be a bird. No, because that's not apomorphic. Synapomorphies are the shared derived characters that a group has, which help define it as that group, right? So synapomorphies of modern birds would include things like the pygostyle in the tail, the loss of teeth, the fusion of the wing fingers, various particularities of the way that the pubic bone points backwards and doesn't come together at the midline, things like that, right? So a transitional form is a form that shares the plesiomorphies of the later group, that still has but has some of the plesiomorphies that are lost in the later group, and then only has some of the apomorphies in the later group. So for instance, in the case of Archaeopteryx, what apomorphies of birds does it have? Well, it has the feathers, it has some aspects of the shoulder, it doesn't have the keeled sternum, it doesn't have the pygostyle, it instead has plesiomorphic conditions for that. So because it has a mixture of plesiomorphies with other dinosaurs that are lost in modern birds, but it also has some of the apomorphies of modern birds, it is in fact a transitional form. This is what also prevents us from using unrelated organisms as some kind of transitional, right? Because maybe you'd say, well, maybe a bat is transitional between a dinosaur and a bird because, it has wings, but it doesn't have feathers, and it has teeth and claws like a dinosaur, although they're not much like a dinosaur. But then we would say, okay, but it lacks all the actual apomorphies of birds, and the plesiomorphies that it has with dinosaurs are just the ones that it shares with all other amniotes, not specifically dinosaurs, so we can reject that option. Tick fresh off the water, Talik, for 100 Argentinian pesos says, wasn't Archaeopteryx a dromaeosaur? How's it going to become a bird? It was not a dromaeosaur. It does look like it is closer to birds than being a dromaeosaur. Also, I believe it's earlier than the earliest known dromaeosaurs. So, but it is very close to dromaeosaurs, and it's still unclear whether or not Deinonychosauria, which is the group that includes dromaeosaurs and troodons and their common ancestor and all of its descendants, actually includes birds or not. That is still up in the air. One of the complicating bits is that certain Paravians, which is the group that are closer to birds than they are to dromaeosaurs, seem to have the hypertrophy digit 2, which is like that killer claw that you see on dromaeosaurs. So it's not clear whether or not birds are like in that group, or if they're just basal to it, basally branching from it, or I guess you could say whether Deinonychosauria is basally branching to birds, whatever. Yeah, it's not entirely clear. All right, here's more Dino Dave.
Here's Alan Fiducia, World Authority on Birds from the...
Oh, of course, Alan Fiducia, the guy who hasn't had a good argument since, like, 2002.
The UNC Chapel Hill, he says, paleontologists have tried to turn Archaeopteryx into an earthbound feathered dinosaur.
No, they haven't. That is not a thing that's ever happened. It is definitely a dinosaur, but no one has ever said it's earthbound in the sense that it doesn't go into trees and it doesn't have any gliding or even flight ability.
But it's not. It's a bird. A perching bird.
And we'll take a drink for that, too, because Alan Fiducia was wrong about that. Although at the time that he wrote this, 1994, 30 years ago, feeling old yet, yeah, that was a reasonable thing to think.
And no amount of paleobabble is going to change that. Archaeopteryx has these perching claws. He's got...
It doesn't.
Fully formed feathers.
That's true. We'll take a drink. That's true. Good job. Dave, you finally said something right.
The modern structure of the feathers of Archaeopteryx and their organization to a wing as an airfoil are typically bird-like. Evolutionists are dying to find something that's kind of like a half dinosaur, half bird.
No.
No,
Because-
creationists are.
Yes. Birds are entirely dinosaurs. You can't get any more like a dinosaur than a bird, right? Birds are as much a dinosaur as a T-Rex or a Triceratops or a Stegosaurus or a Herrerasaurus. They are 100% absolutely pure dinosaur. Nothing about them is unlike a dinosaur because they are dinosaurs. Right? Just like your dog isn't uncanine-like. It might be distinct among canines, but nothing about your dog is unlike a canine.
And they've tried all kinds of things. In fact, there was Archaeoraptor.
No scientist looked at Archaeoraptor, which is what a fake fossil was called, that was published in National Geographic, not any actual peer-reviewed journal, and then thought it was a real animal. Every single scientist who looked at that concluded very quickly that this was a composite fossil that had been faked by someone in China looking to get a better price for the fossil he had found. Everyone who looked at it who was an actual professional in the field said that and warned against publication. No journal would take a publication on Archaeoraptor, which is why the guy who bought the fossil in China had to have it published in National Geographic, which does not engage in peer review, being a pop sci outlet. But you know what Archaeoraptor was composed of, at least in part? Microraptor, which is indeed a transitional form between modern birds and older non-avian dinosaurs that actually confirmed an earlier prediction about bird dinosaur ancestry that was made back in the 19th century that was based on the fact that occasionally chickens, domesticated chickens, are born with feathers instead of scales on their feet, and when they are, they're asymmetrical flight-like feathers, like are found on the wing. And so this guy hypothesized that that was actually an atavism, and that the earliest ancestors of birds would have 4 wings, which is exactly the condition found in Microraptor. Archaeoraptor is not a point against evolution. It is one of the coolest confirmations of an over 100-year-old, previously untestable prediction made solely on the basis of evolutionary biology and knowledge of things like homology and how different, occasional mutations, although I wouldn't have used the word at the time, can bring back atavistic traits. I cannot explain how cool that is and how annoying it is that creationists pretend that that's basically the opposite of what it is.
This was prominently featured as breaking news in National Geographic, and then it was shown to be a
Top side
fraud.
articles aren't science.
No, they're
It's
not.
not peer review.
If you say this was proclaimed in National Geographic, you are already on the wrong foot, because what it wasn't was proclaimed in any actual peer-reviewed journal. Because why? No one would touch it, because everyone knew it was a fake. At least everyone who matters to this topic, which is to say, actual paleontologists. But hey, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to pour some more gin and very fancy tonic into my glass here, and we will be right back in just a few minutes. In the meantime, though, please enjoy the musical stylings of one Bent Hovind, who, by the way, does have a wish list and a Patreon in the description if you want to toss some money at the guy who is not only my co-host, but who has done the music that you hear at the beginning of pretty much all my videos and at the end of most of my videos. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, we are back. All right, we got a few things to read, then I'm going to give my quick after the break spiel, and then we are going to get back into it. So first of all, Jillian Miracles from Molecules Ren, who's been a member for 13 months and is at the amniote level, says, I explained about the channel to my mom the other day. She's happy we're fighting pseudoscience, even if it's another hobby of mine she doesn't get. Hey, you know what? My human parents do not get the fact that I have a YouTube channel and it even makes money. They don't even understand how that works. Like, I tried explaining how, like, this is a thing that I can do to pay bills, and I don't get it. I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about it. It pays the bills. That's all you need to know. And they're like, okay, we're glad you're enjoying it, and that it's working for you. I'm like, thanks, guys. And then my dad got high. Which actually is a thing. My dad's been getting high lately, and so when I talked to my mom and I mentioned that I had done that on a trip, she's like, well, she calls me Tim, which is, it's not like it's a secret that my name's Timothy. She's like, Tim, don't tell your mom that. I'm like, dude, Dad is high right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You don't get to be all high and mighty about this.
High and mighty.
I didn't even notice. I guess that was my dad. Savage Sarcopterygia is extinct. I'm sorry, I can't not laugh at that one. Gifted 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Richard Taylor, some awe, Vesta Freya, Amber Rum and Dino Nuggies, Was Unwilling Clock, Robert Kincaid, Callum Houghton, I'm not really sure, please let me know. Revenant Rye, Whatever Happened, whatever channel, and Crappy Animations. All just get gifted memberships. So, let's drink 10 drinks. That's a 5 here. I'm going to take a quick break while I read the super chat. Tick fresh off the water, like for 200 Argentinian pesos, says, AIG me toque ugvatik amari, as in the IPA, acute means stress. That's Chana or Chana, I'm not really sure. It's a functionally extinct South American language, but the last speakers are trying to resuscitate it in their community. Well, I hope it works. You probably know me, I'm largely skeptical about such attempts, but I really do hope it works. I'll take a quick drink for that, because I'm pretty sure I know what it means. And I hope that at the very least, linguists can get in there and record as much of the language as possible before it potentially goes extinct, because while language extinction is always tragic in my view, the tragedy is lessened if it can at least be recorded for posterity, right? So that's one of the reasons that I'm a big fan of linguists going places to record languages, especially minority and shrinking languages, because if they are lost without having a linguist record them, then they're just gone. That's it. Especially if they're unwritten. If they're written, then there's a possibility of finding a bilingual text that can help, but that's a tiny possibility for most languages. So, Vandalian 1998 for $5 says, if you think your adopted human parents have a hard time understanding, imagine what your dino parents would think. Godzilla. Yeah, no, I don't even try, because for one thing, they're extinct. But for a second, yeah, they'd have no idea. I'll drink for that. I'll take 5 more drinks for the other 5 members. Okay, so, as I'm sure all of you know, this channel is, in fact, almost entirely supported by viewer support, which we just got a whole bunch of, so thank you so much for that. This channel is, it basically couldn't exist as it does on the basis of just the ad revenue that YouTube gives, which is a minuscule amount compared to the support that I get from viewers. So if you're currently someone who is not supporting financially, but you are interested in doing so, and you can afford to, you can't afford to, please don't. This should be one of the first things you cut out of your budget if you're having a budget problem. But if it is in your budget and you can afford to and you are interested, there are a number of great ways to support the channel, and I hope that the value proposition is worth it. I try to make it as good a value proposition as I can. There is the Patreon and the channel memberships. Patreon starts at $1 a month. The channel memberships start at $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can get a 15% discount if you take an annual pledge, which basically just multiply the number by 12 and then multiply it by 0.85, that's the number you'll actually end up paying if you go annual. Both of them give you early access to videos. There's going to be over 20 videos right now that are in the can on YouTube for early access that you could just watch, most of which are at least an hour, some are more than an hour long. There's probably 24 hours easy of Dapper Dinosaur content right now that you don't have access to unless you're a channel member or a patron. Or maybe one of the science friends who I've given early access to because they helped out. That happens too. But you're probably not any of those because it's a very small number of people. Far smaller than the number of people watching. So, yeah. Also at higher tiers, there are more perks. You can get your name in the credits, all sorts of nice stuff. You can also get access to the Discord server, which is one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me. It's one of the most reliable ways to get a hold of me. Especially since I get so many random emails, even for my business account, that if I don't recognize your name, there's a fair chance I will forget to answer your email. But hey, if an annual or a monthly pledge isn't your thing, or you just want to give me, or Vishanti in this case, a bunch of dopamine, we also have linked wish lists in the description. Vishanti and I both have books. There's other stuff in there. I think Vishanti has like a sunglasses holder or something. I have some like gaming stuff in there. I've got more of this delicious tonic that I'm drinking in my gin and tonic because it's really great. I'll put that in there because I want more of it. There's also a merch store linked below here. If you look, there's a shelf. And if none of the items that are actually on the shelf interest you, if you click on any of them, you'll still be brought to the store where you can browse all of the items. So yeah, those are some great ways to help. And again, like I said, if you can't support it financially because you can't afford to, please don't. And if you just don't want to, that's fine too. Either way, whether you're supporting financially or not, liking this video and sharing it helps with getting this video out to more viewers so I can get more people watching, more people getting all this fun creationism, debunk, science education stuff going. And ultimately, also, maybe a few more members and patrons. So, with that though, oh, and hey, Paula G is here, who somehow doesn't have a wrench. I don't know how that happened. I will fix that. So there you go. You are now able to have some amount of power here, there, Paul. Basically, if I've streamed with you before, chances are...
power!
Well, it's limited power, because I have unlimited power. Alright, here we go. Here's more Dino Dave.
But they were so eager, they just ran with this thing.
Yes, the guy who bought the fossil and who wanted publicity for it ran with it. The people who didn't run with it were literally any scientists ever.
From the remote Liaoning province of China, an unusual dinosaur fossil.
It's not the Liaoning province. This isn't that boss at the end of Castle Soul and Elden Ring. It's Liaoning. And I'm saying that badly because I don't speak any Chinese languages, but it's a whole lot better than Liaoning province.
Fossils made a mysterious journey from the hands of Chinese smugglers to the polished halls of the National Geographic Society in Washington. It may be remembered as modern paleontology's greatest embarrassment.
I mean, I wouldn't remember it as that because, again, Vishanti, how many paleontologists signed off on this?
None.
Exactly. Imagine someone coming by and like saying, I don't know, let's say that you're just pick something, like you're an IT guy, right? And someone comes by and says, hey, did you hear about that guy down in shipping who poured coffee all over his computer? Boy, is egg on your face. Haha, IT. Like, what? That has...
All right,
Granted,
buddy.
I have to fix it, but like that's not embarrassing for me. It's embarrassing for him. We're entirely different things.
Well, long before you're going to have a dinosaur that has fully formed wings that can actually fly, he's going to have poor legs that can hardly walk.
Oh my god, no.
What?
This is just a Ken Hovind drawing. This is just a stolen Ken Hovind drawing. So we're going to take a drink.
And that's another bingo card. Square checked off.
Nice. All right, so, hey, dinosaur or birds are theropods. Like T-Rex, or Ceratosaurus, or Velociraptor. Now, Vishanti, I know you're not a dinosaur expert, but you've been to a few museums, you've seen Jurassic Park, you've probably even seen, like, I don't know, The Land Before Time. the animals that I just named, like Tyrannosaurus, Ceratosaurus, Velociraptor, how many limbs do they walk on?
4.
Do they? Does T-Rex have 4 legs?
I'm just picking. Well, you named animals also that had 4 legs.
No, I didn't.
So
I
my
said
brain went 4.
Velociraptor,
They have.
T-Rex, and Ceratosaurus.
Did I make up Triceratops? Did I make that up out of nowhere?
Absolutely made that up. I did not say
Awesome. I'm just going to hallucinate dinosaurs that you didn't name. But yeah, they walk on 2. They just have 4.
They have 4 limbs, but they only walk on 2 of them.
4 limbs.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how many legs do birds walk on when they walk rather than flying?
2.
Okay. Now, are they walking on their hind limbs or their back limbs for birds?
Hind limbs or back limbs?
Sorry, hind limbs or 4 limbs. Sorry, my bad. That's my bad on that one.
Usually they walk on their hind limbs.
What about T-Rex? Hind limbs or 4 limbs? Is it walking on those tiny little arms?
Hind limbs.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
it doesn't walk on the tiny little arms.
if birds evolved from theropods, and both birds and theropods walk on only their back legs, did a leg ever evolve into a bird wing?
No.
No. Mm-mm. So, if the question is, how can you walk on a wing? It's an invalid question. The ancestors of birds, did not evolve walking limbs into wings. The quadrupedal ancestors, way back at like the stem of Archosauria, were probably facultative bipeds, which means they weren't even obligately using their front limbs for locomotion. They were hind limb dominant. And then as time went on, especially in the line of animals leading to both pterosaurs and dinosaurs, bipedalism became the default. All the quadrupedal dinosaurs actually have bipedal ancestors. What actually happened in the evolution of dinosaurs is that 2-legged animals turned into 4-legged animals. If you look at the earliest ceratopsians, unlike Triceratops, they're 2-legged. You look at things like Psittacosaurus or Leptoceratops, Protoceratops, bipedal animals. Dinosaurs start off as bipeds. Even in sauropods, the earliest sauropodomorphs, like Plateosaurus, were at the very most facultative quadrupeds. They could easily go around on 2 legs. And if you go even earlier, you still get obligate biped sauropodomorphs. This is... I don't know how to say anything other than this is an intentional deceit. Because this guy knows that the birds are supposed to have evolved from theropods, and the theropods do not walk on all 4s. So his supposed problem of how do you evolve from a quadruped directly into a bird when you would have to support your weight on your poor little wings is nonsense. And further, let's count the fingers on this poor little dinosaur who wants to turn into a bird. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is more fingers than any coelurosaur, except maybe some of the most basal ones, which aren't the ones that are the direct ancestors of the birds. And also notice how the wing is actually a membranous wing supported by the 4th digit. That's how pterosaur wings work. So apparently, if I'm supposed to take this guy seriously, and this problem here, this guy thinks that dinosaurs who were quadrupeds evolved into pterosaurs, which then evolved into birds.
Okay.
That is not anyone's
Bless his
idea.
heart.
Yeah. No one... Maybe David Peters thinks that. But he also thinks that, like, toothed whales are more closely related to shrews than they are to baleen whales. And that baleen whales...
one of the thoughts of all time.
Yeah. It's... The less said about David Peters, the better. Vandalia 1998 for $5 says, are they walking on their hind limbs or back limbs? Yeah, Dapper 2024. Yeah, okay. I get it. I screwed that up. I think the creationists have infected your
maybe
brain
I
from
did
too much
hear
exposure.
Triceratops or Ceratopsian, but whatever, it's fine.
I'm
may
pretty
have
sure
also
I didn't.
hallucinated that. It's fine.
We'll keep going.
And so he's going to be sorted against. It doesn't make any sense.
Yes, your ridiculous straw man that is not even remotely like anything anyone has ever thought does indeed make no sense. That is why it's a straw man. We'll take a drink, because you know what, Dino Dave? You got that right. Your straw man indeed makes no sense.
What about Tiktaalik? Don't you know Tiktaalik is this fish? He's starting to crawl up on land. And
Is it a fish?
I mean, it's as much a fish as you are. If by fish we just mean like a member of Gnathostomata, then sure. sure, it's a fish. But so are you. And so am I. So are birds. If by fish you mean it's a fully aquatic animal with gills, no, it has gills, but I wouldn't call it fully aquatic. It's at least semi-terrestrial. So, like, I don't know. Is it a fish? Maybe. Depends on what you mean. Although, again, those nostrils seem like they're oddly placed. Pretty sure the nostrils on Tiktaalik were very,
I'm
very
also
dorsal.
just like, look, in the colloquial sense, that is not a fish.
Yeah, I would have trouble calling that a fish in the normal colloquial sense. Now, the one above it, that's a fish.
Yeah, that's a fish. But Tiktaalik, you're probably going to get, like, randos on the street going, that's an amphibian.
Which it also isn't, technically.
Yeah, it just, average people on the street.
DM Wing and his deplorable ilk for $2 says, pterosaurs walked on their wings, Godzilla. First we'll take a drink for Godzilla, and then we're going to talk about that. They did. However, our earliest ornithodyrans and our only well-established pterosauromorph, Scleromoculus, were all bipeds. So it looks like the quadrupedal stance of pterosaurs is actually something that evolved later, perhaps after they started evolving their hands into wings. So it is true that they were in fact quadrupeds on the ground, but it is also true that their wings are descended from arms, like bird wings are, and that they were bipeds at their most basal ancestors were bipeds. And DM Wing and his deplorable ilk for $2 says, sorry, one I already read. I know what I'm doing. You know what? We'll call that a Dapper's a professional. Yep. Here we go.
The first amphibians, tetrapods to walk around on land. So people have suggested that
amphibian and tetrapod is not a synonymous term. The first tetrapods were not amphibians. They were groups that became the ancestors of both amphibians and amniotes, who are sister groups. Amniotes are not nested within modern amphibians. Tick fresh off the water Talik for 100 Argentinian peso says, though I consider myself a tetrapomorph, my mother's maiden name was Ixi Frito.
Aisha Frito.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that would make sense because these are Argentinian pesos that I should probably go into like Spanish mode, huh?
Yeah.
Which really is how it is. Like my brain shifts gear and then suddenly it's like, okay, now I can do Spanish stuff sometimes. Still not great.
I would have said Paisha. It may also be Paihe.
Apologia
So
for
it depends.
5 Beaver Buck says, when I discovered Dave in 2020, he was just back from a modern sauropod search expedition in the Congo. Yup. Oh my god. Let me guess. He didn't find
anything.
I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say he didn't find any modern sauropods. I've actually only just recently heard about this guy. And like I said, though, he does seem to have spent a lot of time trying to lose weight since his picture up on creation.com. So good job, buddy. That's not easy to do, and I applaud you.
Let me guess. Somebody prevented him from finding a dinosaur. Was it they?
Well, maybe it was NASA. They were taking a break from training the penguins to guard the ice wall around the flat Earth to go and try to prevent some creationists from finding the sauropods. Oh, I will never stop comparing young Earth creationists to flat Earthers because they're both wrong Earthers.
Yep.
this odd fish, it's kind of specialized fish, it's got a flat head, and it does have these
okay, we'll let him finish the sentence.
Rather unique fins here, but its limbs could not have borne the weight of walking. Its fins are clearly fish-like.
So Dave isn't entirely wrong, but here's the thing. Remember when we talked about what it means to be a transitional form, right? You have some of the apomorphies of the later group while having more of the plesiomorphies that are common to the ancestral group. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the apomorphies of the earliest tetrapods that Tiktaalik has. One is, it has a particular elbow-like joint and a knee-like joint in its fins that no earlier known body fossil for, tetrapod-like animal has. So it has that apomorphy of tetrapods. It also has the dorsally placed eyes and nose instead of the laterally placed eyes and nose, like is found in earlier stegocephalian fish. So it lacks the apomorphy of the laterally placed orbits and nares, and instead, that's the plesiomorphy. Instead, it has the apomorphy of the dorsally placed. It also has the plesiomorphy common to the earliest tetrapods of labyrinthodont teeth, which basically means teeth that have a very complex structure that's maze-like, hence the name labyrinthodont. It means maze tooth. That's not present in earlier stegocephalian fish. Although we actually do have one stegocephalian fish where that's basically the only tetrapod apomorphy that it has, and it's older than Tiktaalik, meaning that Tiktaalik is not the only link in this chain. Right?
Wait a minute. If there's a labyrinth tooth, does that mean there's, like, tooth minotaurs?
I'm going to go with yes. We
gotta find one.
Anyone who wants to send fan art of a labyrinthodont minotaur, which is a minotaur that hides in the labyrinthodont teeth, send it right over. We also have another really important...
It sounds like a Valdevia creation.
It does. There's another really big one. Hey, Shanti, what's between your shoulder blades and your cranium? Got any extra flexible bits of anatomy there?
Between my shoulder blades and my cranium.
Yeah. Can you get anything you can move around, maybe to help you look in different directions without moving your shoulders?
You know, I'm gonna just wildly guess neck.
Yeah, Tiktaalik has a neck. That's an apomorphy of tetrapods. Only tetrapods nowadays have necks. All quote-unquote fish that we normally call fish, the skull is directly connected to the bones that are homologous to the shoulder girdle, and the pectoral fins grow directly out of that complex of bone, which includes the cranium and the jaw. Tiktaalik doesn't do that. Tiktaalik has a separate shoulder girdle and head with a neck between them. That is a distinctive apomorphy of tetrapods. So, given our definition from earlier, where we say a transitional form is one that has some of the apomorphies of the later group, and more of the plesiomorphies of the more basal group than the later group has, and it has a mixture of both of these traits, Tiktaalik is a definitive transitional form. I don't care if you think it looks like a weird fish, and I don't care if it couldn't support its weight entirely on its limbs on land. First of all, no early tetrapod could. Most of them were dragging their bellies or at least their tails around. So that doesn't even matter. But even if it did, it still wouldn't matter, because we still have this mix of tetrapod apomorphies with more than normal for a tetrapod plesiomorphies shared with earlier stegocephalian fish.
The very part that should be evolving into toes
Yeah.
isn't. In other words, it's not even that pendactyl limb that's supposedly the common ancestor of all tetrapods.
Yeah. Spoiler alerts. Tiktaalik isn't the common ancestor of all tetrapods. No one has ever suggested it is. Later tetrapodomorphs, like Acanthostega, had actual fingers, phalanges, unlike Tiktaalik, which still had fin rays, like a ray fin fish, kind of, except they were bonier. But it also had things like octodactyl limbs, 8 fingers. It's not till we get to even later tetrapod that we settle on the pentadactyl limb arrangement, finger digit arrangement, that then becomes standard within tetrapods even later. Basically, Dave, is it Bill or now I can't even remember. This guy, Dino Dave, that's it, it's Dave. What Dave just did was complain that Tiktaalik is too transitional. Therefore, it can't be transitional. Which is, I suppose, a take you could have.
Wow.
Let's just take a drink for how dumb that is.
Yes, maybe it could kind of crawl around through the rubble and the debris and,
What rubble?
Maybe he's going with the Silurian hypothesis. This is like the rubble of the ancient Silurian civilization that we just don't know about.
There we go.
Yeah. Maybe it's the elder things. Around this time, they'd already established their empire all across the world and under the oceans, and the Shoggoths were running around. Yeah, this is one of the early wars between Elder Things city-states. Yep.
Amongst swamps and this type of thing. But look, we've got creatures today, like this handfish.
Imagine looking at the handfish and thinking, see, evolution fake, though. Because one of the most common talking points I hear from creationists is like, well, how come we don't see fish evolving into amphibians today? Excuse me.
Really?
What do you think is happening here? If that's not basically what you just asked for, I don't know what could be.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If I were a creationist,
Look,
the last
it's
thing I
a
would
fish
want...
with, like, weird hands. We named it a handfish, but evolution fake though, lol.
Seriously? Oh.
And the frogfish, they kind of amble up onto land and go back down into water. I mean, are they evolving into amphibians?
I mean, not technically, but also yes. They are becoming increasingly good at terrestrial locomotion, which could mean that at some point in the future, they could actually establish fully terrestrial groups. In fact, mudskippers are basically already terrestrial actinopterygian fish. Mudskippers spend almost none of their life actually in the water. They get almost all of their oxygen from the air. They mate on land. They burrow on land. Granted, in wetlands, but again, amphibians are tied to the water too, and we don't call them fully aquatic generally. I mean, there's some fully aquatic amphibians, but most of the time we call them terrestrial. Mudskippers are already about as terrestrial as your average salamander, and they're ray-finned fish. This is exactly what is happening right there. If it becomes more and more advantageous for mudskippers to adapt better and better to terrestrial environments and drier environments, they will become a new clade of terrestrial vertebrates that derive their terrestriality separately from tetrapods. They won't be tetrapods. They will be their own secret third thing.
No. We have the air-breathing lungfish. Besides,
well, the air-breathing lungfish is interesting because as being a ripidestian, it is in fact both genetically and morphologically more similar to tetrapods than it is to any other group of fish. Now, there's two different groups of lungfish. They're both in Ripidistia. They're actually both in Dipnoi, which is the group of the lungfish, which is, there's some in South America and some in Africa. I don't want to get into the weeds of like Dipnoi systematics, but yeah, they are in fact more closely related to tetrapods than even the coelacanth is, and they are more related to tetrapods than any other group of fish. The sister group of tetrapods in existing animals is Dipnoi. Together they make up Ripidistia, the clade that includes tetrapods and lungfish.
We have fossil trackways in Poland that the evolution themselves have dated to 10 million years ago.
10 million. 10 million. Look at your own slide, dude. 10 million years. You know what? Let's be fair.
Earlier than Tiktaalik, not 10 million years ago.
Maybe he'll correct himself. We'll let him go. And then we'll pause and talk about these trackways.
I mean,
Nope. Just moving on. Okay. So, yeah, as the slide said, these alleged tetrapod tracks are from 10 million years before Tiktaalik. Now, there's a few problems. One is that being made underwater, they're not very detailed. So it's actually not entirely clear that they are trackways in the first place. There have been alternate hypotheses put forth, and there is no consensus. Some of the other hypotheses are that they're actually feeding traces from fish that were actually sucking up some of the muck at the bottom of this lagoon or whatever, and trying to sift out anything like bivalves or small crustaceans or something like that to eat.
Well, this is why we're getting handfish and lungfish, because they're tired of all the microplastics.
They're going to come on land and stop us from making microplastics, huh?
They're just like, listen, enough is enough.
There's actually a sci-fi book that has a similar premise, where humans have just kind of wrecked up the place, and so the Earth has started to produce a new species of like sapient organism to get rid of the humans, and all the humans left in the entire world are stuck in a single little city, as the rest of the planet just kind of rebels against them. So,
hey, when you've had enough, you've had enough.
Right? Mother Earth is just like, nah, that's it. I'm done. New humans. You guys take over.
2.0.
Yeah. So it's actually not clear that these tracks are actually tetrapod tracks, or even tetrapodomorph tracks. But here's the other thing, right? Transitional species don't actually have to be the direct ancestors, and they can persist after later more derived groups exist. So all this does is mean that maybe, if these are actually tetrapodomorph tracks, and that just means that the anatomy of Tiktaalik is relatively basal, and just like happens all the time, that relatively basal anatomy has persisted. You can see that in other organisms, right? We'll just take great apes as an example. There were a lot of things about the great apes that aren't humans that are relatively basal to humans, right? Like, they're really long arms. Like, if a human stands up, their arms rarely go much below the crest of their hips. When you have, like, closed hands, right? Or if you go to the wrist, right? It tends to be a little bit below the crest of the hips. Most great apes, when they stand up, their wrists go down to the knees. That's the basal condition. The existence of humans does not negate the existence of other apes with the basal condition for limb proportions. It just doesn't. But that does not negate the transitional character of Tiktaalik, because it retains the fact that it has some of the apomorphies that are common to tetrapods, while having more of the plesiomorphic traits common to the larger group of stegocephalian fish. Nothing about this negates it. All it means is that if it's true that those tracks are tetrapod tracks, which again, not clear. If it is true, all that means is that there is a more derived tetrapodomorph that existed before Tiktaalik, and also that Tiktaalik-like anatomy would go back even farther than 10 million years before it was found. That's it. That's all it means. This isn't a temporal paradox. It's not a paradigm shift. It's not even replacing Tiktaalik as the ancestor of tetrapods, because no one ever said it was.
Earlier than Tiktaalik. So how can Tiktaalik be the first thing to start transitioning to walking on land?
No one ever said it was, my dude. Never a claim. I'm just going to take a drink.
Doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, that's why no one ever said it.
Yeah, hey, remember that time Mexico took over the United States? That's so dumb. Yeah, historians don't know anything, and it's like, what?
Yeah. It's not a thing that anyone ever said.
The equivalent.
Yep. This guy.
How about the horses? This series that you see right here, prominently presented in textbooks for many years and still in a lot of the textbooks. The place that you would go to see it is the American Museum of Natural History. And they would have them all lined up to tell you about each of the different ones. And what they didn't always tell you was that...
Oh,
he doesn't like it. I mean, I know that's the answer, but...
Here's the real problem that real scientists have, is that this portrays horse evolution as orthogenetic, which it wasn't.
Yeah.
But do you think he knows what the word orthogenetic means?
No.
No. You think he could tell the difference between saying this is too orthogenetic and saying this supports evolution, which didn't actually occur? No. Because here's the thing.
Absolutely not.
This guy is affiliated with Creation Ministries International. I don't know if he worked for them, but he's at least affiliated enough with them to get an author page on their website, creation.com. Creation Ministries International accepts this as a group of actually related organisms that have an evolutionary relationship between them.
Well,
according to the big creationist organizations like CMI, AIG, ICR, this is a legitimate actual set of transitional fossils between the basal horse-like animals that Noah would have taken on the Ark and our modern equids. This guy is arguing against the consensus in young Earth creationism. Heather, do hyenas count as dat or cog coon for $2 says, Great Tartaria. Yeah, come on, man. How come all the historians ignore Great Tartaria? They don't even talk about the mud flood. Those idiots. Don't they know all rocks are actually fossils?
That some of these were in the exact same layers.
So?
And other ones were in higher layers. It wasn't in the nice, neat order that they kind of presented them there.
Okay.
Oh my god.
First of all, that's largely an exaggeration. They generally are arranged more basal earlier to more derived latter. There is some overlap in temporal, range, which is expected. And it's not orthogenetic, which is probably
time-traveling horses confirmed.
Yes, that is the only option. I wonder if we can get our hold on the equid TARDIS.
Ooh.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
And Niles Eldridge, all the way back in 1989, said those textbook pictures are lamentable. It's a classical case of paleontologic museology. Someone's just making stuff up.
Let me guess. This is a quote mind?
Largely. If you actually check, Eldridge, who is, the partner in crime of Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldridge, are complaining about the overly orthogenic trail of horse evolution, where they're saying that the impression this is giving is that this primitive Hyracotherium, or they probably would have called it Eohippus, but that's a junior synonym for Hyracotherium, doesn't matter, evolved directly into the next step, into the next step, into the next step. When in fact, actually what was happening is there was a branching pattern where some lineages were going on with the increasing size and reducing digit count, and some lineages weren't. Some lineages were getting smaller. Some lineages were retaining more digits. There was a whole lot of diversification within Equidae, which is what evolution actually predicts. But in order to simplify this for the average museum goer who doesn't really want a full explanation of all the intricacies of the branching nature of equid systematics, especially since your average museum goer probably can't reliably name more than 3 species of equid in the first place, it is, I would say, unfortunately, portrayed as orthogenetic in an inappropriate way. Now, look, there's always that tension between what we show to the public for their consumption versus the actual detail that they're neither going to care about nor in most cases really comprehend, not because they're stupid, but because it takes years of study to get to the point where you can easily digest this information because it's so technical and so in the weeds and so inside baseball. And I don't have a great answer to this, and I sympathize with Eldridge. I don't like how museums often portray this evolution as orthogenetic. But to say that Eldridge, who himself was an evolutionary biologist, who at no point ever said that common ancestry wasn't true, or that these transitional forms weren't transitional, or that transitional forms didn't exist, or anything like this. To pretend that that guy is pretending that the horse sequence is just completely invalid in terms of being transitional, or having anything to do with the evolution of equids, is just a lie. And not only is it a lie, like I said, it disagrees with the consensus among young Earth creationists, who in fact do tend to believe that equids share a common ancestor that would have been something like Hyracotherium or Mesohippus, or somewhere around that area, which is like the first 2 organisms that you see on the left here. Or the last 2 organisms on the left, if you're doing one of those right-to-left languages like Hebrew or Arabic. Heather, do hyenas count as dat or cogcoon for $2 says, Dr. Hooves confirmed.
Nice.
I would totally watch like the My Little Pony Doctor Who fan crossover animation.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh, we got a bingo blackout. Good job, Dino
nice.
Dave. Bargain basement discount Kent Hovind.
Seriously.
Just got into the Hall of Fame of blackouts.
Stories. But I actually went to the American Museum of Natural History last year, and they
Congratulations.
changed the display.
So then what are you still
is it
complaining
more
about?
accurate now?
Probably.
Now they say a textbook case revisited. They still show the
Oh my
old
God.
guys there in the background.
He's going to
but now
bitch when it's arranged the other way, then he's going to bitch when they change it. Dude, pick a struggle.
Seriously, like, this is just you complaining either way. As far as I can tell, Dino Dave just doesn't want fossil equids displayed at all. And when your position seems to boil down to, please just don't display these fossils to the public, it's hard to conclude that you're actually arguing in good faith. Because the only way it seems to make Dino Dave happy is to just hide information from the public, which I'm not okay with. I assume, Vishanti, you're not okay with just hiding information from the public.
Very much not okay with that.
Yeah, that's the actual conspiracy that, creationists like to pretend science is. That seems to be what he's actually advocating for. Also, look at how gigantic the attachment point for the masseter muscle is on that horse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do not get bit by a horse. They might not have big...
Horses are terrifying, and anybody who doesn't agree has never been close enough to one.
Yeah, oh yeah. A horse could end you if it wanted to. The fact is that most horses just don't want to. But, that's a choice they make.
Mm-hmm.
They could choose otherwise, and there's very, very little you could do about it.
Imagine getting drop kicked by one of those things into next week. Yeah.
on the front they say, well, even though it's in the textbooks, we now have signs that cast doubt on their own famous horse evolutionary display.
Except they don't. Okay, let's first I'm going to take a drink because it's not what's
When
happening.
I told you that spending 3 days with my family for a funeral of the matriarch was less painful than this video, this is what I'm talking about.
I mean, I remember my grandmother's funeral. It was definitely less annoying than this, less painful than this. I mean, for one thing, it was mostly me and my cousins swapping fun stories about my grandmother, right? It was sad, but we still were, laughing about all the fun times we had together. Because what else are you going to do? All right, so let's read this. The horses in this exhibit are arranged to contrast 2 versions of horse evolution. Those along the front curve show the classic straight line concept. So that's what we're seeing down the bottom right, where we have this line of horses. that over time, horses became larger with fewer toes and smaller teeth. Taller teeth. We know, however, that horse evolution is much more complex, more like a branching bush than a tree with a single main trunk. The horses in the back row show just how diverse this family of mammals has actually been. And so what you're seeing at the bottom here is an actual phylogenetic tree, which shows the actual inferred relationships as a result of morphological studies and cladistics that have been done on the horses. But note that at no point does that actually invalidate horse evolution as such, nor does it actually tell us anything about whether or not these animals are transitional, because they manifestly are. Because again, they retain more apomorphies of modern equids than the most basal equids, while still having more of the plesiomorphies of parasodactyls broadly than do modern horses, who have lost some of those traits, like the, multiple fingers and whatnot.
I love that we're talking about horses and do not stand behind a horse. Don't surprise a horse while standing behind them. Yeah, these are choices you usually only make once.
Approach horses from the front, and if you absolutely can't, make yourself known audibly.
Yeah.
While you're still far away. Yeah, Alex Barkle says horses...
Anybody that's ever been around horses or has owned them, they'll tell you, horses are smart, but they're also kind of dumb. And they're dumb, but they're kind of smart.
Alex Markle says horses being a CR1 creature in D&D makes no sense. It does. It's there for gameplay reasons.
Somebody who's literally never met a horse.
Yeah, it's pretty much there for gameplay reasons, so that you can't be acquiring as an easily purchasable item like a CR3 beast, because that would just be unbalancing. But yeah, if you were to actually make a realistic D&D, horses would probably be like CR3 or something.
Yeah.
They're giving up on the horse.
How do you say they're giving up on the horse evolution? They're displaying horse evolution right here. I'm taking another drink. You're just lying, Dave. God. You're just lying. And the evidence is on the picture. Actually, I guess you didn't take that because I can see the image of the person who took that, and that's definitely not Dave.
Mm-mm.
You're lying with the evidence on the picture that you yourself have taken. Have displayed. Obviously, that looks like some woman who took this picture who was definitely not Dave. Right. Maybe it was his daughter or niece or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Fearmonger says the most realistic depiction of horses in media is John Wick 3, where he kills a bunch of guys by getting a horse to kick them in the face. Correct! See, John Wick knows a weapon when he sees one.
And actually, John Wick is surprisingly realistic in terms of how many rounds a gun can fire before it actually needs to be reloaded.
Yep. They took all that into account.
Mm-hmm.
I love movies where somebody runs out of ammo. I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
One little small thing, man, it makes all the difference.
This is my 6-shooter.
And he gets tired when he fights,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
What about whales?
What about
whales? Supposedly.
Oh, look, there's a beluga whale. That's one of my favorites. Beluga whales are so adorable.
Baby beluga.
Also, beluga whales serving on Starfleet ships is now officially canon.
That's adorable.
Are something like maybe cow or a hippo, some kind of mammal creature.
Much more like a hippo than a cow. But yeah, an artiodactyl. Whales and hippos together make up the clade Whippomorpha, which is a fun word to say. Just try it. Whippomorpha. So yeah.
Whippomorpha.
Went back to the water. So we evolved from fishes, we come up out of the water, and the whales are mammals that went back to the water. What makes them say that? Well,
I mean, for one thing, they're obviously mammals and they live in the water. You kind of put two and two together, right?
Tesla Ranger, somebody's not counting for Deadpool. I love it. Yeah.
That was a good scene. I'm looking forward to the next Deadpool movie.
Oh my God, I am. I already talked your ear off about it. Freaking Pyra!
Part of it is this pelvis. You see this little bones out here?
Yep, that is indeed a pelvis. Rashawn, remember when we saw the actual physical whale pelvis for
a
whale skeleton?
I do, and I was like, hey, is that a whale pelvis?
Yep, sure was.
Or I may have said something really dumb and uninformed, like, are those its legs? That's more likely, but,
I don't remember exactly what you said, but you noted them, and yeah, that's a whale pelvis.
I did. Indeed.
That, the evolutionists say, are vestigial leg bones.
I mean,
I'm going to just channel the spirit of Professor Dave right now and go on a rant about how vestigial doesn't mean they're useless. It just means they're not serving the purpose that they originally developed for.
Correct?
That's it. That's my
exactly
rage
correct.
right there.
And actually, I would disagree with this caption that says they serve no purpose. The leg bones probably don't serve much of a purpose. I don't think I've ever found anyone claiming that they do, but the pelvis certainly does. The pelvis attaches very significant muscles. In fact, there's actually a paper that I read not that long ago that talked about using whale pelvises as a way to assess the evolutionary pressures put on the male intromittent organ, on the base that the pressures that puts on not only that organ, but also on the pelvis itself. Because in most animals with a pelvis and a penis, the walking function of the pelvis is so dominant that any evolutionary pressures on the pelvis to change shape to accommodate a better reproductive strategy are just swamped by the necessity of locomotion. But that's not the case for cetaceans. And so the evolution of the cetacean pelvis, especially in male specimens, was used as a proxy to see what kinds of evolutionary pressures are put on a pelvis of a male in a mammal as a result of reproductive necessity. And there was a whole paper about the size and shape of pelvic bones and muscles attachment sites and all this stuff. And they were like, yeah, because the whale doesn't have to use this for locomotion, the main point of a pelvis, it's free to evolve to accommodate, the ideal shape for reproduction. And I thought that was fascinating.
Sir Derpy Mister has officially summoned me to sing a ditty. Acceptation. 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 Acceptation.
Nice.
He once ran around with legs on 4 legs, just like, mammals today. But he fell in the water and he started swimming around. And now we just...
No one says they fell in the water.
Man, this is the time where we should play the clip about Pachycetus. Where it's like, oh, I'm just going to the ocean for some shrimps. It's not going to change me. And then it fast forwards like millions of years later.
Whale noises.
Yep. And the deer is just like, what?
have this little leftover pelvis. It's useless. It's a vestigial organism.
Organ, not organism. They're not the same word.
That's what a lot of textbooks still say. But newer research has turned
Man, you don't even read the textbooks. You just go off hearsay from like Kent Hovind, who also doesn't read the textbooks and hasn't read them probably since the 70s.
Remember, this is the guy, Kent Hovind is the guy who put up a picture about the nebular hypothesis of the solar system formation, and then read part of the text, and then said it was about the Big Bang. Yeah.
Evolutionary assumption on its hips. Quote, instead of being just vestigial, whale pelvic bones play a key role in reproduction, according to a new study. No hip bones, no baby whales.
Oh,
I'm going to just link that video about Pachycetus in the chat.
Please do. Once again, we're citing not an actual peer-reviewed paper. Instead, we're just citing science news.
Woo!
Yeah, but also, again, reproductive use of the hips doesn't mean that they're not vestigial. And also, imagine thinking it's some kind of like big discovery that a mammal uses its hips in reproduction. I feel like most of my audience is familiar with how at least some mammals reproduce. And I think most of them are familiar with the fact that it is very involved, like the hips are very much involved in that process. No matter which part of that process you're a part of, the hips are a part of it.
And the article's entitled Whale Sex, it's all about the hips.
The fact that
that's going to scandalize your audience.
Whatever, yeah.
I want to be very polite in mixed company, but let's just say it's...
Like I said, he's going to be like, oh no, we can't talk about this, even if it's like for biology.
By the way, Jackson Wheat, my co-host for my monthly show, Jackson with Jackson, has a whole video just about whale penis. Go check it out.
Also, I love that there's this growing consensus among not professionals that like sea monster sightings are probably just whale dicks.
I mean, they are really weird. And big and long. And flexible.
That's what she said.
For producing baby whales, those bones support real important organs that allow the whole process to continue. Without them, you don't have babies.
You mean just like in a mammal?
Sex.
Yeah. I mean, he actually did already say sex. You can just say penis, man. It's fine.
Penis.
Like, if you're talking about biology, no one should be blushing at the word penis. And if you are, then you're not ready for a biology class. just go do something else. If the word penis is going to make you go all like red in the face and embarrassed and make you cover your face like you're an anime girl trying not to look embarrassed, just do something besides biology. It's fine.
I'm not ready for biology class.
Yeah. Maybe you're not. That's okay.
Okay. Here is Encyclopedia Britannica. The evolutionary origin of whales remains controversial amongst zoologists.
I mean,
I
would need a whole,
since when?
Yeah, I would need a whole lot more context because that's not really
Encyclopedia
true.
Britannica 2016, like, I want to know the context of that quote.
Yeah, me too, because it's really not contentious. I mean, obviously, there are still some controversies about exactly where each particular genus goes, but, like, no, it's pretty obvious that it's artiodactyls and that whales are most closely related to hippos, and that, like, you know, their earliest, like, proto-cetaceans that we have the whale-like involucrum, which is an apomorphy unique to cetaceans, while also having all those plesiomorphies of, you know, basal artiodactyls, like the particular artiodactyl arrangement of the wrist and ankle bones, varying the weight primarily between digits 3 and 4, which is kind of one of the big points of being an artiodactyl. All that cool stuff. Walking on your tippy toes, which is one of the things that makes you an ungulate. Yeah. It's almost like these transitional species still have, once again, the thing I've been harping on this whole stream, some of the apomorphies of the later group, while having a larger suite of the plesiomorphies of the wider group. Weird.
Huh, how about that?
Weird.
Now, my friends, you can tell stories all day long. But we got to get really good at
projection.
Right? Like, these guys are just telling stories. Now open your Bibles to Genesis 2.
Right.
Like, okay. Also, 95% of my audience has never heard of the book, The Biotic Message, Evolution versus Message Theory. And only 4% said that they had, and that's out of 131 votes. So, yeah, that is an obscure book.
Distinguishing between people's wild speculation, hypothesis that often gets changed over time, and the observable scientific facts.
You know what, Dave?
Why is science?
And seethe, my man.
I love that he just...
Science refines itself in the fact that things aren't set in stone or dictated to you to never change. That's a you problem.
Yeah, it's also a good thing. That's how we know that science is getting better, is because it's still changing.
It's almost like, you know, you should change your opinions on stuff when you get more evidence.
Yeah. All right, guys.
And when you understand things, you should, like, maybe modify your models and stuff.
Yeah. All right, we're going to start wrapping it up here. Vishanti, do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about?
Oh, man. I'm still in, recovering from this week, TM.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So, yeah, I don't even know.
Okay. So let's take a look at what's coming up on this channel. So, today is Saturday. On Tuesday, we're going to be having the next Kent with Bent. Bent will be back in the pink tutu, second time in a row. So thank you very much to everyone who donated to make that happen, because I appreciate it. Bent appreciates it too, because, you know, some of that money goes towards his mortgage, in case you're wondering. Let's see. Coming up on Thursday, we have Answers News is Awful. Sorry, Paul, I'm stepping on your toes a little bit, because I'm doing some Answers News. But unlike Paul, I am not only doing it if Ken Ham is there. So this is not ham and egg news, because there is no Ken Ham. But
okay.
In this particular time,
just egg news.
Yeah. This time, the topics that they were discussing that I'm going to talk about are Neanderthals, dinosaur feathers, and the moon, because apparently they found something to complain about in moon research, which is weird. But
oh wait, so ham and egg news. This might be kosher, but it's probably also still trafe.
Also, I skip over it, but they complained that some guy got arrested for trespassing because he was trespassing on a reproductive health clinic that performed abortions. Apparently, AIG's position is that anyone should be able to trespass anywhere they want, as long as that place is a place that provides abortion service. Which
they can trespass anywhere they want, as long as you agree with the reasons they're doing it.
Yeah, basically. If I don't like the place, then people should be allowed to trespass there. Okay, cool. That's a really dumb statement.
Is a very sore topic for me, because I grew up outside of Birmingham. I was in college in Birmingham, and Eric Robert Rudolph bombed a freaking abortion clinic, and it's next to one of my favorite Mediterranean restaurants, and I take that very personally.
To be fair, as far as I know, this guy was not physically attacking any people.
Yeah, I'm just.
We're not at that
it's
level.
Like an instant rage button.
So yeah, I mostly skip over that, except to note that like even most pro-choice people aren't going around telling people to go trespass on clinic grounds.
Yeah.
So even by the average pro-choice standards, what this guy did was wrong, and he should have been arrested. But of course, AIG doesn't see it that way because there's no amount of extremeness that's apparently too much for them these days. But then on Saturday, we still have a good 16 minutes of this video left.
Oh my god, will this never end?
Yes, it will. In 16 and a half minutes. Which will, of course, turn into like 3 hours art for us. So that'll be next Saturday. Now, here's the thing. The next Tuesday after that would ordinarily be Matt with Maddie. However, I am going to try to shift Matt with Maddie to the next week and then shift Jackson with Jackson down a week again so that Vishanti and I and Zach B. Hancock can go do a celebration stream or perhaps a anniversary stream of 365 days of Sal Cordova being bitch made. And so we will come together and we'll talk about why it is and how it is that Sal became bitch made. And then we will go over a talk by Sal's pal himself, Dr. John Sanford, in which he is trying to defend his idea of genetic entropy. And in case you don't know, Dr. Zach B. Hancock is one part of a two-man team that recently published a peer-reviewed paper directly
Dan Stern Cardinal.
Yes, with Dan Stern Cardinal, also a friend of the channel. And they published a paper directly refuting Sanford's previous paper, 2018.
What better way is there to celebrate the bitch made-iversary than to read people who are publishing papers completely dunking and taking a shit all over John Sanford's work?
Mm-hmm. So stay tuned for that, not this Tuesday, but the one after that, because I'm expecting it to be fun. We will be starting that at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will be going for a while. This is not going to be a 2-hour stream. This is going to be a marathon stream. Bring a snack, bring a drink, maybe bring backup snacks and drinks. And we are not going to, at least initially, be activating the drink counter, because it's a marathon stream. If I drink that whole time, I will have alcohol poisoning. So we're not going to do that. So I hope everyone has a safe rest of the weekend. If you are interested, we will be going to watch some Power Rangers Dino Thunder over on the Discord in just a few minutes. If you're not interested in that, that's fine too. It's a perfectly fine position to have. I hope everyone stay safe out there. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And I hope I see all of you on Tuesday. But we are out of here. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Philravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Denny5252, Elleron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Monkey They Them, Sphincter of Doom, Wallace, John Ackerman, Ita V, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.